and welcome to our Day 4 live stream coverage from RSA Conference 2024. I'm Jameson Cush with Tech Target Editorial and Ion Tech. And if you missed any of our previous day's live streams, you can find them on YouTube. Just search for Ion Tech. Once again, I am joined by Sabrina Paulin. Sabrina, Day 4, RSA Conference. There's something exciting happening a little later today.
There is, in addition to all the exciting sessions, we've got a cybersecurity queen in our presence, Alicia Keys. Yeah, okay. This girl is on firewall.
I knew you were going there.
I had to.
Well, there's no easy way to segue from that to our next guest, but I thought, so it's RSA, we really need to ask, it's our last day of live streaming, I think we should ask the serious questions.
We should.
In all seriousness, the biggest IT security challenges, and we have a guest here who can help us answer them.
We do.
Rob Clyde, he is an ISACA evangelist and past board chair of many titles and much experience. Welcome.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Jameson and Sabrina.
Titles, experience, please, tell us all about yourself.
All right, well, I'll start. We'll maybe have to have a conversation because, as you can probably tell, I'm a little older, so been around this field for quite some time. Actually started out in computer science as a developer before the internet. So I've been doing this for a while.
How many people can say that?
Yeah, and studied AI as one of the things I studied in school, which was an interesting experience. I'll now flip to the end, where you mentioned ISACA. I've been a volunteer for ISACA for over 30 years. Great organization, great association with over 170,000 members of cybersecurity, risk, audit, and governance professionals. 220 chapters all around the world. Great organization. I've loved volunteering for them. I've served on committees, given speeches, many speeches. That's actually how I started with them. And most recently, I was on the board of directors. Earlier in my career, I've done a lot of other things, almost all around cybersecurity, including having been the CTO of Symantec.
Wow. Yeah, that's a well-rounded resume.
Yeah.
And you say, volunteering at ISACA, you're volunteering, but it's really, you can put the time in. It's basically a day job, So talk to me a little bit more about what it means for you to volunteer at ISACA and be on the board.
You can make it as big or small as you wish. For example, I mentor a young woman who's a student in cybersecurity from Vietnam. And she's a second-year university student, and I've been helping her figure out how to achieve her career goals.
Amazing.
She would like to be in the C-suite someday, and she's wondering, what do I need to do now to get ready? That only takes an hour or two a month, and anybody can do that. So there's so many cool ways to volunteer. If you're on the board of directors, that's going to take more like 140, 160 hours a year, which is going to be a little more hefty, but there are so many ways to volunteer. You can serve at your local chapter, you can speak. At the very least, why not either mentor, or you can, if you're earlier in your career, be a mentee, or need some help. So it's a fabulous nonprofit association. I often tell people when I'm speaking at ISACA, look around the room, most likely you're going to get your next job from somebody here. So it's also volunteering for ISACA is also a great way to build your career and be able to have more connections than just LinkedIn or the kind of the way we reach out to people today. You get that human connection.
Right. And your other title at ISACA, you're an evangelist, and that's a pretty small group. ISACA is a very large organization. What does it mean to be an evangelist at ISACA? Yeah,
so it means we're authorized spokespersons for ISACA. All the evangelists are people who have volunteered for a long time. We have trust in ISACA, and most importantly, ISACA has trust in us because we're authorized to speak for ISACA. And ISACA really does lean on its members, its evangelists, its volunteers to try to be the front of ISACA. So we have great staff, they're fabulous, people that can support you and make sure all the materials and things you need are there. And so it makes it a powerful organization. I think we have over 350 staff members that as volunteers we can lean on.
Okay, so you mentioned sort of career development or career development is a benefit from ISACA, but what other benefits can the volunteers and members
So a big one is you can get certified.
Okay.
So you can get certified in security as a security manager. You can get certified as an IT security auditor, as a privacy professional, as a governance professional. We have certifications for emerging technologies like AI and blockchain and things, IoT, things that are exciting that are out there. So tremendous education opportunities. And we always try to couple the education opportunities with a way to show your employer or the world that you actually have learned something with a certificate or a certification.
Right.
Something that's recognized by the community.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think we've definitely established you know what you're talking about. We're here at RSA, we're talking about cyber threats, we're talking what cyber professionals are doing. So tech in cyber is evolving so fast, especially these last couple of years, faster than ever before. What are the most prominent challenges and threats that security leaders right now are most worried about?
Sure, so as I often talk to boards because I serve on boards of directors, and I'm also a member of the National Association of Corporate Directors, where I, believe it or not, have a certification. As a director, there is a certification for board directors. And it's interesting, one of the things they're most worried about is they see or have experienced ransomware attacks. And some of them have taken down whole systems and networks. We had a big one on our healthcare system not long ago where doctors couldn't get paid and hospitals couldn't get paid. And the systems were all jammed up, and they actually ended up paying the ransom. And then they got their systems back somewhat, and then the bad guys started trying to extort them, saying, we'll release your data unless you pay us more money. And this kind of illustrates the problem that we face today. And we have new technologies as well that I'm sure we'll talk about that cause real concerns. But in terms of what they worry about of just being taken down, the idea that somebody's going to attack you and either hold your data hostage or your systems hostage is a real fear point for top leaders in the company, and with reason. And I would suggest we probably have been spending too much time just focusing on incident management. Many of these companies had incident management. They managed the incident, but the fact is they were still down. Or they were not able to conduct business normally. And we are seeing a shift towards cyber resilience, which means in the face of an attack, I just keep running. And we've done this before with other types of attack, like back in the day with a lot of denial of service attacks. Those still occur, but we're much better at maybe running a little slower, but we still run. And we've got to get to that point with ransomware and other types of attacks that take us down today.
Yeah, we were talking with some of our reporters earlier this week that data extortion-based ransomware is really on the rise, and ransomware is evolving in that direction.
It is. The reason ransomware is so popular is that if you think about it, it's a superior way to monetize computer crime. You extract money directly from the victim, as opposed to having to sell the data, which is still out there, and that's still a popular type of computer crime to sell the data. But whether you're holding it hostage where they can't access it because you've maliciously encrypted it, or you're holding them hostage saying you'll release it, they're both potentially devastating. The second one is really hard. You pay them. How do you know they're not going to come back a year later and tell you, well, pay us again, we still have the data, we'll release it now if you don't pay us. And how do you know they won't sell the data? And you really don't. You don't know those things. So the better approach is try to prevent it from happening in the first place, rather than just, incident management response is important. We all better be good at it, and it's going to happen to us, so we need to be good at it. But we've got to get to the point where these things just don't happen as often. We have cybersecurity by design. We have privacy by design.
Is that the advice you give some of the companies you're working with? How do we prevent these challenges, they ask? And your answer?
Yeah, so it does start to come down to some technology. For example, many companies try to prevent phishing attacks where that's one of the most likely ways ransomware gets in, or somebody is able to get in and steal your data because they get your credentials, a user's credentials, by getting them to click on a link, or they get malicious code to come into a system by clicking on a link. A good idea to teach users a little bit about phishing attacks, but it turns out as human beings, we're not very good at detecting phishing attacks, and we never will be. And yet you have companies testing their users to see, they deliberately send phishing attacks that aren't real.
Right.
And just, if you click on it, you get a mark against you, and something's going to happen. Maybe 3 times you do it, you're fired. There are companies that do that. Maybe you get sent to remedial training. None of this is good, in my opinion. I advise board directors not to do it. It sets up a poor dynamic of mistrust between the employee and the employer. And the fact is, we have technology that is far, far better at detecting phishing attacks, especially with the new attacks that are being generated by AI that are extremely difficult for humans to detect. So that's the kind of thing we need to look at, prevention techniques. Are we really putting in enough controls? And are we using technology to its full advantage and putting in the necessary process and policies in place that we can actually have more prevention and not have to respond quite as often? So that's kind of one of the things I preach. You need to be able to respond, but if we spend all our time responding, we're missing the fundamental aspect of security, which is prevention.
Right. So you just mentioned AI just now, and I know that you have actually a very interesting start with AI. Perhaps you were on the AI train perhaps longer than really many others. Tell me a little bit about your start with AI and kind of what you were being taught about AI way back when you were in school.
Yeah, so when I was a computer science student in school, I was very interested in AI. I did papers on it, I took courses on it. And I remember to this day, one of my professors telling me that AI was really coming along. We were moving quickly. We were using a language called Lisp primarily to work with AI, and we had some interesting things. We had chatbots that would act like a psychiatrist, and they were kind of interesting. You'd actually have a conversation with it, and eventually, though, if it got sidetracked, it would just say, "Tell me more about your mother," no matter what question you asked it. And just,
just a stock question.
Yeah, it was kind of a stock question when it didn't know the answer. So it was very rudimentary. But interesting enough, my professor taught me and taught our class that we would know when AI was really hitting the tipping point, when it would just take off, was when AI could beat a grandmaster at the ancient Chinese game of Go.
And that happened.
And it did happen. And the reason that was the tipping point is chess has 4 billion possibilities, so you can actually brute force chess now with today's computing power. And they knew that day would probably come, but AI has more possibilities than there are atoms in the universe. So you don't brute force play AI, you have to have intuition to play Go, I should say. So he made us all develop programs to play the ancient Chinese game of Go. And I learned a little bit about how far away we were. And they had to all play each other. That was the class assignment. And how well your program played the other kids was how well you were going to get graded in class. And I had a great deal of fear and trepidation going in. My poor program could beat a human if they had never played Go before. The second time, the human always won.
Yeah, okay.
I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get killed. And believe it or not, my program won the class.
Oh, wow.
So good for me, but it also, and our professor mentioned this shows us how far away we are from that.
Right.
Fast forward many years later, decades later, in 2016, Google, with a program called AlphaGo, defeated a grandmaster in the ancient Chinese game of Go. It was mentioned briefly on the news. Most people missed it, but I took great notice because, okay, and I started speaking about this at ISACA and other places that watch out, AI has reached the tipping point. It is now going to likely grow exponentially in capability, and most of us will be astounded at what we see. But at that point, it's already well up the path. And it's interesting with many emerging technologies, people can find the tipping points. We have one for quantum computing, for example. And as most of the population usually will miss the tipping point.
Right.
But my hat's off to the early computer scientists who predicted correctly the tipping point for AI.
Did you ever think you'd see that in your lifetime? Or?
I was astonished when it happened. For years, any project that had the word AI in it was automatically killed. So we developed new terms like machine learning so we could get stuff through. Now we've actually given different meaning to machine learning, but trust me, the original reason we started calling it machine learning was because if we attached the AI label to it, it would not get funded in companies and even with government projects. Now we're in an era where the exact opposite. There's a level of excitement that I haven't seen since my early days in computer science around AI.
A little bit of a boomerang where some people are now hesitant about things being called AI because they're like, is it actually AI or is this just marketing speak? So I really love seeing both sides of the coin, the excitement that it generates and the educated skepticism.
Yeah, well, the skepticism is well-founded.
Yeah.
If you look at, just walk around the booths here at RSA, you will see AI all over the place.
Absolutely.
And I know for a fact, because I've worked with many of these companies and I quiz them about tell me about your AI. In many cases, not all, there's some real good use of it out there, but it's worth asking, what AI models are you using? Where is it being used? Where is it not being used? But how many AI people do you have at your company? And you often find out it's like a little sprinkle of salt.
Yeah.
There's really not much going on. And I should also say AI is not the answer to everything. AI is by definition probabilistic in its answers. It might be the right answer. The accuracy rate can go up, but it doesn't usually hit 100%.
Right.
Sometimes we want a deterministic answer. Just do the math.
Yeah.
And calculate the answer. And so we need to be careful that we use AI for the right thing, and many areas of cybersecurity should be more deterministic. Either I have access to this file or not. Using AI to tell me if I have access to the file means sometimes I might get access when I shouldn't.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but at this show, I mean, as you said, AI is everywhere. There are real tangible risks and challenges associated with it. And so what would those be?
Yeah, so we did a pulse survey just recently at ISACA on AI, asking over 3,000 professionals what they felt were the top risks. And interestingly enough, the top risk was misinformation and disinformation. The next was around the phishing and using AI-based phishing, but there's a great deal of concern about, will AI actually give us accurate information? Will inaccurate information find its way into our reports? People are using AI, for example, to summarize reports and try to give them an idea of what's happening. Don't want to read the 1,000-page report, so I'll use AI and I'll get, and maybe it's right, maybe it's not. So you have to take it with a grain of salt, and they're very worried that that won't actually occur. So that's definitely a big one. The other is, there's a lot of shadow AI. So almost everybody is trying AI. And we've actually had instances of board directors taking their board books, feeding them into the public ChatGPT, and getting a summary so they didn't have to read the entire large, voluminous board book. They all said it did a good job, but now they just put their public information, their private information, confidential information, into a public AI.
Right.
And so they're also rather concerned that their companies are behind the curve on AI policy. Only 15% said their company had a formal AI policy.
And what are the challenges with implementing AI policies? It's hard to do right now, right?
I think the big challenge is trying to get the perfect AI policy today is going to be difficult. Think of all the ethical issues and uses of AI that as a community, we're still debating to try to figure out the right answers. My advice would be start with the easy stuff and get something out, like, are you allowed to use today's generative AI or not? Are we going to get a private version of the generative AI, which you can do, that is just for our company that we can use, and many companies are doing this. and prohibit them, though, from feeding confidential information into public AIs. That's easy.
Right.
Here's where you can use AI-assisted writing. Here's where you can use AI-assisted coding. Here's where you can use AI-assisted image generation and video generation. And here's where you can't. Here are the lines where you can't cross.
Right.
So you can't make a video that looks like our executives and purports to speak for the company that's AI. That would seem like an obvious policy.
Right.
So I think very quickly you could come up with some easy aspects to the policy that are going to make sense. I think others are going to be harder to figure out.
Right.
But doing nothing, which seems to be what many companies are doing around this and not having firm policies, is probably not the right answer. AI is the biggest revolution since the internet. And if that's the case, and it's moving fast, we can't tackle this at our usual slow pace and not get familiar with it, not get our arms around it, and start to put in the right policies. One last thing I would suggest, just prohibiting AI for most organizations is the wrong answer, and for countries, there's countries that are thinking of doing that, is the wrong answer. You're going to lose in the innovation game. And just like we didn't just prohibit connection to the internet, we did it first, by the way, but it didn't last long. Only lasted a few months.
Yeah.
If companies that did that fell behind, and we'll have the same thing happen with AI. We've got to figure out how to leverage it, use it, and allow our employees to use it.
Absolutely. Is there any other emerging tech you have your eye on?
Yeah, so one I'm really excited about is the Internet of Things, and it is closely related to AI.
Yep.
And the devices that we have that are connected to the internet are actually leveraging AI and getting smarter themselves. Where it gets a little tricky is much of the AI is done in giant data centers with huge GPUs, but there's a lot of work being done about how do we get decision making closer to the event at hand? Because I don't have time for, to call home all the way up to the AI in the cloud and then get the answer back. We might have some local processing and decisions that have to be made. A great example is a self-driving car. You can't wait for the answer coming from the cloud.
Yeah.
You've got to have more of it just right there. What if the connection goes down to the internet, which can happen for a variety of reasons. So smarter devices and actually moving AI to the edge is definitely coming. The security of those devices is tough, and I'm actually chairman of the board of a company called Crypto Quantique that does IoT security. Because unlike our tablets, our notebooks, our phones, people don't usually have them in their personal possession. Unlike servers in data centers, they're not behind locked doors.
Yeah.
They're accessible. Think of a surveillance camera. They're accessible by many people that can even be, even our cars. People can get underneath them and tinker with them. So how do we ensure that you're not getting rogue devices plugged into the IoT network that look like real ones and then siphon data off, or worse, give inappropriate commands? And how do we make sure we can update those devices securely? How do we get that, and for IoT we call it a root of trust. How do we have a root of trust that we can build security off of and build the various encryption keys off of so that it can safely and confidently, the IoT device, join the network and participate and not have issues of counterfeiting and actually being hacked itself.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
just want to make sure that we get this last question in because we're running a little short on time, but you have a wealth of knowledge. So I have to ask, generally speaking, what sort of advice would you give IT professionals watching this right now?
My biggest advice is don't wait. Learn these emerging technologies. You do not have to become an expert. No, you do not have to be able to write AI yourself. But you do have to understand it, you do have to study it, understand the risks, and learn about it. Similarly with IoT, similarly with other emerging technologies like quantum computing. Don't wait, get proficient so that you can be ready to help your organization. And also, frankly, it's the best thing for you for your career, because you're going to be relevant to what's going on today. You want to be a bit ahead of the curve, not behind the curve trying to catch up. And too often in the cybersecurity area, we're a little behind the curve.
Great.
Sounds like good advice. Just before we go, I want to make sure that our viewers can find more information on ISACA. Where can we go?
Yeah, go to ISACA.org. We have wonderful training materials on AI, for instance, and IoT and other emerging technologies. Highly recommend going there. There are many free things that you can download. It's easy to join. It's a small membership fee. It's an association, so it just goes to being able to produce those materials.
Right.
And I highly recommend getting involved. Your local chapter is likely not far away, and there are lots of other professionals like you can engage with.
Yeah. Awesome.
Excellent. We're up, Clyde. I think we could have gone a full hour, but unfortunately we only have a half hour. So past board chair, ISACA evangelist, among many other titles.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Rob.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us. I'm Jameson Cush from Ion Tech. I think we're back at 10:30 to talk diversity in cybersecurity for Sabrina Paulin. Please like and subscribe.